Hello, everyone. My name is Jonathan Guarine, and I'm the research economist at Florida TaxWatch. Recently, we've been keeping close tabs on consumer data privacy, which for those of you who are new to this topic, it deals with how companies are collecting, sharing, selling, and using personal information for business purposes. And across the US, this issue has gained a lot of state level momentum. And as of February 2022, there have been over 46 consumer data privacy bills across 22 state legislatures. And here in Florida, we have come to see that this issue has once again emerged in this current legislative session. Two bills in particular, HB 9 and SB 1864, seek to prescribe a regulatory framework for how businesses collect and use personal information. And they also give consumers certain rights over their own data, such as the right to correct or delete personal information, and also access what categories of personal information companies may be using about them. And in a recent report, Florida TaxWatch analyzed the updated compliance costs of consumer data privacy. And what we found was that there would still be issues relating to staffing and training, IT infrastructure costs, and also the needs to respond to different consumer verified requests. And so Florida TaxWatch found that the cost of compliance would range anywhere from $6 to $21 billion. And when you look at for a specific firm, that cost range from anywhere by $700,000 to about $2.5 million. And so one of the things that Florida TaxWatch has repeatedly raised is this concern of how it would affect small businesses. And we see that even though the legislature has taken substantive steps to lower those compliance costs for smaller businesses, there would still be a competitive expectation for smaller businesses to integrate consumer data privacy, even though they do not have the resources that a lot of these larger firms have. And so I'm joined here today by Tony Carvajal, our Executive Vice President at Florida TaxWatch. And so Tony, explain how this issue has been playing out in the legislature recently.
Jonathan, thank you so much for that introduction. And actually, I want to remind folks, anybody who wants to read the reports that you have written, there's 3 now on data privacy. They could go to floridataxwatch.org and look up data privacy on that research screen. Your latest report did a great job of just reconfirming what we already knew. Folks that are engaged that will be impacted by the legislative bills are going to have to do things to upgrade their IT infrastructure and make sure that there's opt-out provisions. And I think we've been very clear. Protecting data privacy and allowing individuals privacy is an important element, but there are some big costs. You're asked a great question. How has this been playing out in the legislative cycle? And for those who've been watching this since last year, you know that when we first reported this, the implementation costs last year were about $36 billion, and about 2/3 of that fell on the backs of businesses about 20 or fewer employees. Since last year, they have improved the bills, let's just be honest, by focusing the attention on those folks that are really trying to sell and share data beyond their own borders of their own company businesses. That said, though, there's still a lot of implementation costs that are going to be in the first year, as you pointed out, $6.2 to $21 billion, and ongoing expenses of $4.6 to $12.7 billion annually. What does this mean? Well, this means that we're standing up for taxpayers, because whether they pass this expense on to Florida businesses, Florida taxpayers, by taxing folks, or whether they pass it on by regulation, it is still something that we care about. HB 9, House Bill 9 this year, has been heard now in all committees, and it's available for floor debate. The Senate bill, its companion on the other side, hasn't been heard at all and is not available for floor debate in the Senate. But where do things stand on these bills? If if the House passes this bill and sends it over to the Senate, they have the opportunity to consider it over there. What are the types of things that we're a little bit concerned about with how it's written? Even though the language has been tightened, it has a really broad net. It was originally designed to capture data companies, big names that you might recognize like Google, Instagram, Facebook. There's an attempt to limit those things. But when we did some more recent analysis about the number of companies and the size of the companies that are going to be impacted, we noticed that I'm just going to give a list of industries here that are also going to be impacted, so you can get an idea that we're well beyond just those targeted information companies. In no order per se, just as we reviewed these things: advertising, agriculture, auto dealership, retail, construction, real estate, groceries, education, electrical, employee leasing, transportation, logistics, financial, insurance, hotels and resorts, restaurants, leisure and hospitality, manufacturing, marine services, healthcare, and medical devices. Each of these fall under the terms of companies that will be impacted right now by the legislation that's being considered by the House. I don't know where this is going, Jonathan, before the end of the year. The House has a real priority to get this on and off their docket and send it over to the Senate. I'm not sure what the appetite is for the Senate over there, but we're watching this. From your perspective, what are the types of things that folks that are impacted by this consumer data privacy, what would they have to do to comply with the law?
Thank you, Tony, for that update. First of all, I would like to reiterate the fact that there is such a wide swath of potential industries affected that what companies have to do specifically to comply may vary from case to case. But at a minimum, to comply with the bills as currently written, companies would have to build out certain IT infrastructure to have a system that verifies, authenticates, and also responds to consumer requests. So I said that consumers are able to send a request, for example, to a company to delete their data. Well, you have to have a process in place to do that. You also have to have reasonable security measures in place to make sure the data are protected. And then beyond that, some of the secondary effects of having a legal or compliance department to make sure that the company is constantly being in compliance with the bill or the law as enacted. Of course, that raises a few concerns of, what about for those smaller to medium-sized businesses that don't have the resources to maintain those departments? Tony, I want to ask a final question from my end, but what has TaxWatch recommended that would be beneficial for mitigating these costs and adverse consequences?
That's a great question, Jonathan. Thank you so much. And I know that your reports cover that. Again, folks can get that at floridataxwatch.org. One of the big things that we've been addressing is this balance of privacy versus cost. Everything's a trade-off. It doesn't sound so bad to have a little button that allows somebody to opt out. And it doesn't sound so bad to control data to make sure that the marketing is not being shared. But we've been monitoring this legislation and it's going through, and there are questions about, for example, compliance and those costs related to private cause of action, which is a moving target at the moment. Companies that are not protecting data, not doing things the right way, sure, there are reasons why the Attorney General or maybe even individuals have a right to recourse for that. But at this stage, we are recognizing that to comply with all that, there's just going to be a lot of legal costs, a lot of IT costs, and we want to make sure that there's attention placed on those exposures. You asked, what have we suggested that the legislature consider to make sure that we mitigate the costs? The first thing is slow this down. The legislation as it currently stands would require implementation by January of next year. So imagine if your IT department immediately walked into your company right now and said, hey, we've got to revamp our entire IT infrastructure to comply with this new law. And by the way, we're going to get penalized if we don't fully comply. All of the penalties would start as early as January of next year. So the first thing the legislature can do is just slow down the implementation and allow the processes to be completed. Other states, as they've implemented, have allowed a lot more time than Florida is considering. Another item that we're suggesting is, consider the fact that states, just like when regions adopt local ordinances, well, when states adopt ordinances that are different from each other, companies have to comply and have different systems that are quite expensive. So we're recommending a federal policy on data privacy protection rights. Absolutely believe that it's an important thing to do, but we just got to make sure that it makes sense and doesn't burden Florida businesses in this process. There are more things that you've outlined in all three of your reports, and they've all been fantastic. If you want to find out any more, make sure that you go to floridataxwatch.org to understand what's in these bills, what's going on. And you can also monitor our legislative updates on the website for a status of where these bills are. We're close to the end of this year's legislative session, and we're monitoring this bill closely and working with a lot of partners across the state to make sure that the impacts are minimized and that consumers across the state are able to have their privacy protected. Jonathan, I know that you're going to continue to monitor this as well, and if it passes this year, we'll talk about the implications, and if not, then we'll continue to work and you'll continue to study this as we go forward. So thanks for your leadership on that.
Thank you, Tony. And if you want any more information, please feel free to reach out to Florida TaxWatch and our research department if you have any more questions about compliance or the potential implications. Thank you so much for joining us today in this video, and have a great day.